All right. Welcome to the coaching collab for the Bay Area 100. I'm Adam Ray, and today is February 19th, and I am on here with Garett Graubins. So, Garett, for those of you who do not know Garett, which should probably be most of you except for me, Garett has lived in the Bay Area. I've known Garett for a number of years. He was a training partner of mine. He's a great coach. He's an accomplished ultra athlete. He's finished 16 100s. He's finished multiple Ironmans, full Ironmans, and then half Ironmans and a whole variety. He is one of our coaches. He's working with some of our athletes currently, and he's going to talk to us tonight about what it actually means to be an endurance athlete or an ultra runner and to train for, first of all, how you train, but then also a bigger picture. How do you train as a master's athlete who has a full life? Maybe kids, maybe probably job. And so, what does that actually look like practically? Both what you do, but then also how do you make it fit into the context of your whole life? And so, with that, Garett, with that lead in, welcome to the Coaching Collab.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam. Let me just pull up the screen here. Adam, thanks for the great intro. And I was actually reflecting a little bit on when I was out in the Bay Area and you and I were running pretty long miles training for 100 together. And it was right around the time that Holly and I were expecting our first and only kiddo. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember it very vividly, Adam. I'm like, wow, I don't know if I'm going to be able to train like I used to be able to train for these hundreds. Like maybe I'll have to downshift into 50Ks and 50 milers. And you were telling me that becoming a parent, suddenly your life is in full vivid color. Uh, that really stuck with me. And I learned very gradually that becoming a parent and then having other responsibilities that come along with that, it's still possible to train for 100 milers. So that was a little bit of the inspiration many, many years ago, Adam, for this topic tonight.
Well, I'm glad I played a role, even a small one, in those
So
original.
I'll roll into this because I know that we have 30 minutes and I want to be respectful of everybody's time since we are juggling a lot of things. And with that, I'll just jump right in. And so first off, man, oh man, like we're all juggling a lot. We're all spinning the proverbial plates and trying to squeeze everything in. And you've probably already had a little bit of a reckoning, or at least once in considering whether or not to sign up for the Bay Area 100 or some other 100 milers, and you've asked yourself, or you've said some of these things to yourself, and wondering if you can actually do this, and if possibly you've bit off more than you can chew, whether it's on your job front, you have a very demanding job, you have family, you have kiddos, you got Saturday morning soccer. How in the world are you going to be able to do those long runs on Saturday mornings if you got to go to Joey's soccer game? Maybe you don't live in the mountains. Maybe you're living in the flatlands somewhere, or you're living in more of an urban environment. How do you train for a mountain trail 100 if that's your living situation? Maybe it's you and your partner have a lot of plans, or you just simply don't want to miss out on a lot of the other good stuff in life. Maybe you've said some of those things to yourself, and at the same time, and there's lots and lots of examples that I could have put up on this board, but here's just three examples. These are people who are out there still making noise in the sport and probably had very similar conversations with themselves. Maybe you've heard of Jasmine Paris. She lives, I believe, in Scotland, definitely in the UK. She's married. She has two kids. She's a vet and a lecturer, PhD. And by the way, she just became the first ever female finisher of the Barkley Fun Run 2 years ago. Or Ann Flower, who really burst onto the scene last year as she was on record pace at the Leadville Trail 100. People are going, "Who is this Ann Flower?" Well, turns out she's from Cincinnati, very close to sea level, married an emergency medicine doctor, and she wound up smashing Ann Trayson's 23-year-old record at the Leadville 100. So obviously she's juggling a lot of other things too. And then there's a long ago friend of mine, Dave Mackey. He's finished the Leadman up in Colorado. He's former Ultra Runner of the Year, holds a ton of ultra marathon course records, including several from right in the Bay Area. He is married, two kids. He's an emergency medicine physician assistant. He does have the luxury of living in Boulder, but If you look closely at the photo, Dave actually had to have his leg amputated, and he's doing all of this on one leg. And I just learned that he signed up for the Leadman again this summer. So a lot of reasons to not take on these hundreds. It's pretty easy to talk yourself into thinking that you have too much going on and talk yourself out of doing 100, but it can be done. And that is really the goal of what I'm talking about now. So, and then just to add a little more fuel and inspiration to the fire, I couldn't help myself. Really, like the ultra marathoning world, we're seeing big doses of inspiration every single weekend nowadays. And of course, you have Myrna Valerio in the top left, who's just shattering stereotypes left and right. The lower left there, that's a gentleman named Jan Vlek, who is a 72-year-old finisher of the Western States 100 last year. And that top middle guy, near and dear to my heart, he's in Duluth, Minnesota. He's 75-year-old Michael Copy, and he just finished the Arrowhead 135-mile frigid race where you have to pull a 40-pound sled of survival stuff. Oldest finisher ever of that race. So I share these because it's very easy for us to really feel intimidated and second guess this very daunting goal that you've all had the courage to take on. But if you're looking for any inspiration, you don't need to go very far. There's a lot of it out there, and you can finish races like the Bay Area 100 with a quote unquote real life. And that's really what we're here to talk about today is what are some kind of core training principles, some tricks of the trade, some hacks that you can put into play to give yourself the best possible chance to prepare for and complete the Bay Area 100, or maybe it's some other 100 miler sometime soon. So what does that look like? First off, I wanted to just try to spell a few myths. And having run 16 100 milers myself and a large number of those races as a father, as an ambitious professional, and also for a number of years as an MBA student at the same time I was training for Hard Rock 100, I've had an open ear to a lot of these myths. And the very next slide, spoiler alert, is going to go into some of the truths that I have seen based on my client experience and my own personal experience. So, myth number one, I call the heavy mileage myth. And that's the school of thought that to have any chance at all of hitting the finish line of a 100 miler, you've got to really log massive, massive miles, minimum 70, upwards of 100-mile weeks. There's just no other way to do it. I'm here to tell you that you don't need to do that. I have one client who finished her very first 100 miler last fall, and her peak week was 50 miles. And I'll share with you some background on how she was able to achieve that. There's also the training race myth. I think getting races on your calendar as trainers are an excellent idea for the camaraderie, for the fueling, for the convenience factor, for the motivation. But you don't need to go hog wild and do a ton of 50-mile races, 100K races to get yourself geared up for a 100-mile race finish. It's not necessary. And in a lot of cases, you may go so deep into the well in finishing a 50-mile race that you're simply not giving your body a chance to recover in time to complete 100. Another one, I call it the putting the rest of your life on hold myth. And this is the mentality of, hey, friends, family, everybody, I'll talk to you in about 9 months. I got this race to do, and I got to go be a hermit where I'm just running, eating, and sleeping when I'm not working for the next long period of time. And let's just talk after that. You don't need to put the rest of your life on hold. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's the specificity myth. Here you are training for, I'm assuming, the Bay Area 100. Wow, well, it looks like I got to get onto mountain trails every single chance I get. And without a doubt, there's benefit to that. And I would encourage all of you, especially if you live in near those glorious Bay Area trails, to get out there on those trails as much as you can. You don't necessarily have to go there every single day. It's not critical to your training, and in some cases, it might even hinder your progress towards your goal. Okay, so a couple truths, which I've already hit on in the previous slide just a little bit, but to be fair, the commitment is real. You signed up for a very audacious lifetime physical achievement goal, and it's going to take a good chunk of time. How much time should you plan on? And a lot of this, I know you're probably already in deep with your training, but a little gut check. 8 to 12 hours of training per week, I think, is reasonable. Your peak week is going to be pretty taxing. When you factor in that really long monster run and some other moderate distance runs, 12 to 16 hours. And this, of course, isn't counting all the additional cross training you may do and also rest. Another truth, it doesn't necessarily need to hurt. There's the no pain, no gain, or one of my old favorite t-shirts from my very naive early running days was pain is temporary and pride is forever. But I'm here to say training for a 100 miler, while taxing and occasionally uncomfortable, doesn't need to be painful. There's manageable ways to really build yourself up properly, and do it in a very smart way, where it's not necessarily a sufferfest every single long run out there. There's the family consideration as well. I'm a big believer. Your family, I think, is your single greatest asset and your secret weapon out there. It's going to be your bottomless well of support and inspiration, whether it's on those long training Saturday runs, possibly your family meeting you at a turnaround point with some aid and some popsicles. And of course, there's that them being the built-in crew out there on race day too. And then there's the professional side too. And I've learned this actually in a few different jobs, but I found that when I'm training for a 100 miler, my work life is actually getting better, and I find my productivity level goes through the roof. And this isn't just a sample size of one. I've heard this elsewhere. And in fact, if you go to Google, it's not that difficult to find Google articles on how employers actually love to hire endurance athletes because it puts on display a level of focus and dedication, discipline, commitment, loyalty to a goal. And it's really the healthiest employees are the ones who are the most productive. And not to mention, if you're juggling family and work and training for a 100 miler, you are probably exceptionally good at focusing and compartmentalizing. All right. So with that, I have a list here of what I consider to be the five pillars of 100 miler training if you have a real life. And I'll just dive right into these. And pillar number one is really just the basic structure. And forgive me, for some of you, this may be a bit of a review, but really it all starts here. How do you structure a proper training plan for your 100 miler? And again, acknowledging that many of you are probably some months into your training already, I think that this might even be a little bit of a gut check to see if maybe you can tweak your training schedule a little bit based on what I'm going to share here. So what I have here is from a high level, a sample multi-month schedule. And the big caveat is this is going to vary on a number of factors. When your target race is, how many months out you are, what your base fitness is. Are you starting from zero? Are you starting from an injury state? Or have you been building a good solid base of 20, 30, 40 miles per week? So all of that is going to impact these time frames and how long your base building phase is going to be, and then your peak training phase. Generally, your base building phase, we do things in blocks. So 3 weeks of gradually longer runs and heavier mileage throughout the week, throughout those 3 weeks, not increasing by more than 10% per week. And then that fourth week is so critical. And this is where a lot of ultra runners really hurt their chances, is they don't honor and respect that fourth recovery week. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the mindset of more is better. More is only better if you give your body an opportunity to absorb all of that great, great training that you've been doing. So it's critical that you really give your body a chance to recover adequately in that fourth week. And then you're ready that next week to add more mileage. Entering then into the peak training phase, and this is where the key really is the longer run, the single long run every week is so critical during this peak training phase. And it might even come at the expense of if you're doing 4 runs per week, when that longer Saturday run, or if whatever day it's on, when that longer run starts to get really heavy, and we're talking like 20 plus, 25, 30, oftentimes your body will tell you when it's starting to get really long. You can do without one of those weekly runs. So you may be only doing 3 runs per week, as counterintuitive as that may sound, training for a 100 miler. As you're doing those longer and longer single runs, your body's going to need a lot more rest. And then finally, the taper phase. Kind of a love-hate relationship that we all have with the taper. On the one hand, there's nothing better after training so hard than putting your legs up. But then on the flip side, this is really when a lot of like the self-doubt and the neuroses can kick in and go into high gear, and you're questioning everything from, wow, am I adding on a few pounds? Am I hurting my chances at finishing? Wow, I'm feeling that little tweak in my hip that wasn't there before. Did I train enough? So, but it's still an absolutely critical phase leading up to the race. Um, and then getting down into more of a micro level, this is what I favor as a general starting point to a weekly schedule. Now, this is where AI is a very useful tool as a training aid and setting training schedules. Um, However, I think the winning formula, in my humble opinion, is blending AI and all of the data that comes with that with the customization and personalization that comes with working alongside a coach. And that's where a lot of the true customization and personalization is going to take place, taking into account such factors as um, tolerance for high mileage, base fitness, access to trails, work schedules. A lot of my clients will send me notes with a heads up. Hey, I have a business trip coming up, and I'm probably not going to have access to trails, but I know I'm going to have a treadmill, and we'll factor that in. Um, the time horizon, the geography, there's just a number of factors that all need to play into what this highly personalized schedule would be. But as a starting point, I favor this general approach. You'll have Monday is a sacred rest day. You need that to let the longer runs from this previous Saturday and Sunday really take root. Tuesday and Wednesday are ideal for your aerobic fitness building runs, and I'll get into that concept here in just a few slides. I like to mix in one up-tempo run. It's common if you're running slowly as you are training for an ultra marathon that you start to get slower and slower and slower. So it's critical to not only build up your lactate threshold, but also remind those legs of how to turn over fairly quickly when the occasion calls for it. Friday is a great rest day because we need to get ready for that long run on Saturday, which is so absolutely critical. And then Sunday, I'm a big fan of learning to run a little bit on some tired legs from the previous day, but not going overboard, because the reality is the later miles of a 100 miler, you're going to need to run on some pretty tired legs. So that takes you through the very basic structure of training schedule. And pillar number two, and this talks to the importance of the aerobic fitness building runs during the week. And this is mastering the art of running slowly. And the reality is your body has a certain amount of glycogen that it can store. A lot of the glycogen is stored in your fat. And by running slowly, and by slowly, what I mean is it's commonly known as zone two. Think of it as that conversational pace where you're running alongside your friends and you feel like you can run forever. You're training your body to become very efficient at tapping into your glycogen fat reserves, which are 50 times greater than your other glycogen stores. So at the end of the day, critical to your success in completing a 100 miler is going to boil down to how well you've trained your body to be efficient in accessing those glycogen stores. And these aerobic runs are going to be key. What does it mean to run at zone two? For those of you with a heart rate monitor, a very rough estimate of zone two would be take 180 and minus your age, and that's going to be the high end of zone two. A more qualitative gauge for that would be keep it conversational. If you can have a normal ongoing conversation, then you're very likely in zone two, and you're going to be building that aerobic fitness. Pillar three, I call time on feet. And this is so critical to having success as you're juggling so many other things in your life. Don't limit your training just to those training runs. Try to think of it as more holistically. When you're not out there on the trail or on the track or on the treadmill or on your local running paths, how can you still be preparing with an eye on the Bay Area 100? And this could range the gamut from walking around your kiddo's soccer field on that Saturday to mowing the lawn to walking the dog. And I've actually had a lot of fun. Some of my best training days for the Hard Rock 100 were my Saturday long run, going to my son's soccer game, staying on my feet the whole time, mowing the lawn that day, and it's got to be a push mower, and then walking the dog. And before you know it, you're like, wow, I've been on my feet for a solid 15, 16 hours. You're ready for bed, but you're also better trained and you've really maximized that day. So a little bit of a hack mentality, but the importance of staying on your feet because that's exactly what your success at a 100 miler is going to boil down to. For work days, it's all the little things. It's standing up during meetings. Be that person in the back of the room who's always standing up. Um, Taking walking breaks, using the stairs. And then there's a number of other hacks, including like getting the family out for some long walks too. Include them in your training. And then also I like to toss in, you get bonus points here if you're pushing a stroller. Some of the best training I ever did was for the Wasatch Front 100. I was training for it living in the Bay Area, and I was pushing my newborn son in a bob stroller up and down those Oakland hills. Or you can wear a weighted vest. You can be that person in the neighborhood who's always seen wearing the weighted vest. Pillar number four, how to prepare for mountainous terrain. And as much as we'd all live in gorgeous scenic mountain towns or at the foot of ski resorts, not realistic. Very few of us have that. So how can you best increase your chances to get ready for the, I believe, roughly 20,000 vertical feet climbing of the Bay Area 100? Um, Obviously, hill repeats have to factor in, and you may need to just exercise some creativity in finding some hills. And I've done everything from running parking garages, working in downtown Denver, to in Minnesota, seeking out the steepest, longest sledding hills, modest ski resorts in Minnesota or ski resorts anywhere and doing hill repeats there. Even stairwells at work, I've done that when I've worked in big cities. So you may need to get a little creative there, and that could also include embracing the Stairmaster at the gym. And also, I would just add in here too, always challenging yourself to walk with purpose. Oftentimes, when people integrate walking into their training, it's a little too leisurely. Be sure to walk with purpose. And what I mean by that is target that 18 to 20 minute per mile pace. Very important as well. Don't forget the downhills. Downhills are just as critical in these mountain races as the uphills. So if you're doing hill repeats, also make sure to incorporate some true effort running downhill. You can consider poles. I'm a huge fan of poles, but on one condition, use the poles correctly, especially when fatigue sits in. A lot of people are using the poles as if you're skiing. You're not getting as much benefit. There's a natural benefit to swiveling your torso and using your poles one plant at a time. And then don't forget about strength training, and I'm going to hit on that in just a minute here. Pillar five, and this is the final pillar, is training races and long runs. So, some tips here as you map out your training race schedule. And as I mentioned earlier, huge fan of training races, signing up for races as training opportunities. And if you live in the Bay Area, you have the luxury of having a whole smorgasbord of amazing races to choose from, including many races that Adam puts on. Identify your A race, which I'm assuming here is the Bay Area 100, but then your B and C. So don't go overboard and shift into hero mode on those B and C races, trying to be competitive or set a new PR. It's simply not worth it. Keep your eye on that bigger goal. Um, I'm a big fan of 50Ks for training races. As I mentioned earlier, some people get roped into having to do a 50 miler or a 100K. Maybe on some level, there is a mental benefit to that. It may help you to gain the confidence that you can go at least half as far as 100. But the reality is, you don't need to. I'm a huge believer in that. 50Ks are great trainers. They prepare the body adequately while also giving you ample time to recover and not pushing you so far deep into a deficit or even possible injury so that you can maintain a semblance of a training schedule. Um, Choose training races that mimic the terrain of your target A race. And then truly treat every race, whether it's B or C, as a dress rehearsal. And that includes using it as an opportunity to dial in your nutrition, get adequate sleep, practice what your diet is going to be leading up to the race. And then as for your long training runs, do them with a group. It's great motivation there and makes the miles go by a lot faster. So I only have two more slides with an eye on the schedule here. I'm just going to hit on these briefly. Some tips and tricks. Please incorporate strength work into what you're doing out there, especially if you're over 40 years old. Each year after you turn 40, on average, you're losing 1% of your muscle mass. So you can start doing that math on if you're 50, 53 like I am, how much muscle mass you're going to lose unless you're offsetting it with strength training. Um, Absolutely critical. It's going to help you to maintain your form as well as you get into those deeper, more demanding, fatigued miles of a 100 miler. Train your gut. Um, this is every single training run is an opportunity for you to train your gut a little bit more. Try to find what your comfort range is for carbohydrates. All the rage right now is going really heavy with carbohydrates. Um, don't necessarily buy into that because every athlete is different and what works for you, um, it may not be what works for somebody else. So use especially your longer training runs to experiment with what works best. A lot of this next one seems so obvious, but it's not put into practice enough. Far more runners go into 100 milers under rested than overtrained. So keep that in mind. Quality sleep. This is really when your body is repairing all the damage that your training is done.
Everyone, Garrett is actually going to be joining us for the training camp. So those of you who are signed up for the training camp or who are going to come visit with us at Sports Basement, we're going to have a big party there kind of on Saturday night. Well, I mean, as much of a party as you can have the day before you're running 40 miles on Sunday. So you all get to meet Garrett. And it strikes me, Garrett, actually one thing that you could probably do a really great demo of is how to use poles. That thing that you just said about poles. Garrett's super experienced from having run Hard Rock, and well, a lot of the folks here do use poles. There's definitely that Los Trampas part of Bay Area 100 definitely lends itself to poles. So both how to use them, the strategy of when they should pop up in your pack, and I'm sure Garrett could give a pretty great demo about that. We'll see you out there. We'll see you at training camp.
All right, looking forward to it. Good night, everybody.